Hey, na. Hey, na. Hello. I wanted to do a video on core values because for star songs, for example, it's important that I feel like I share what my core values are regarding star songs as a way of bringing that information through and the sharing and the love through that I feel is really important for my purpose in this here and now. So core values are the central aspects of, or the pillars, for example, of basically the law of what it is that you believe or what you feel is really important part of a creation. So, for example, in the past when I've done a lot of art practice, if I'm doing a particular collection, there is, without me even sometimes realizing it until hindsight, there's a core value or series of core values that keep me to a certain type of practice. So for example, if I did a collection and I felt really drawn to work with wood, and wood felt like a really important part of that collection, then that would become a part of the foundation of the core values of, say, a method relating to creative practice. And then it might be through certain colors, or even just experimenting with sculptural aspects, so the foundational aspects of what that is becomes a core value in a practice. So for star songs, I, since a child, have had very unusual experiences, which I'm sure many people actually have had. Whether they remember them, that's a different story, because remembering is the light of the membership of who we are, and sometimes we forget these experiences. There are aspects of our consciousness that don't feel relative to our day-to-day life, and so we dismiss things. We dismiss, certain experiences or certain feelings, or if they don't feel relative to the immediate storyline or the surface storyline of an experience we're having. So for me, I guess star songs has been a long time coming, because I've had unusual experiences that I did remember, but I had no one to share that with. And as a child, there was some very interesting things that were being given to me or shared to me through experiences that I had no reflection of in my reality around me. So if people did have those experiences, they weren't opening up about them, and it gave me no room to share them. So it was a personal, what we perceive as personal reality, in which I had to build and gain a level of confidence before I brought through star songs. Not confidence in terms of self-esteem, but more confidence in that these experiences have been a very important part of my practice. And when I started to understand the timeline of these things and the dreams or certain things that came through, they were like little puzzle pieces. So star songs has come through over a really, what we perceive as long time, which is in the here and now. And my reflection of what I perceive as my past and future has reverberated these puzzle pieces. And when my strength of self, in terms of this reality and understanding that it was time to open up and share these aspects of myself that were a part of my reality day to day, but weren't seen as probably normal for other people to experience. So I had to regulate these experiences, or these ways in which I channeled and tried to sort of camouflage into the world. And but having gone through a major, what we perceive as an illness process or a disease process, really removed me from the projective reality in in terms of me just being able to dismiss things. And it put me in a situation where for long periods of time I was still in a space and didn't have really any distractions other than what my physical experience in terms of whatever I was going through in health. And I feel like that helped remove me or detangle me from really toxic relationships, because when that happened, it caused a lot of change, and that change caused a lot of people to have to reevaluate the way that they perceived their reality. How some people would deal with that was projecting onto me as if I was a bad friend because I couldn't physically be in their world anymore, and that's okay. That's just where they were at emotionally. They perceived themselves to be a victim to me being unwell, which meant they didn't have access to that friendship in the same way. So that was their experience at that time, which I know I got projected onto a lot because I was in a position where I had to receive fully. You know, when you are humbled to the degree where you need people to do everything for you, it is really hard to be that dependent for a while. But it actually taught me a lot, and it helped me let go of like guilt and like a lot of anxiety around other people supporting me. It took a long time, obviously. This isn't just something that happened overnight. It was an ongoing process. But it helped me become more sovereign in my connection to self in ways that enforced a practice due to circumstance rather than necessarily me always realizing that was what was happening. So the reason I wanted to bring that up is because core values usually develop from a sense of self that has experienced something specific or general over a long period of time and developed a foundational wisdom from that experience. So my core values in terms of Star Songs is about creating a safe space for those who have had unusual experiences, who are maybe perceiving themselves as what we call star seeds or indigo children or adults. And they're just the names for beings that are have a multidimensional connection to the here and now in the earth experience that involve different realities, maybe beyond the human reflection, the physical reflection, which I would say every being is that, because we are one and we are in a collective which is embracing these ideas or maybe even dismissing these ideas at this time. But ultimately, a star is a light being, and whether we are in that awareness or not, it is a presence that exists within us as a possibility, and that light is connected to all other stars or other beings or other aspects of consciousness in the here and now embodiment. So, and beings that have a very deep vulnerability or sensitivity, whether empathically, telepathically, they have these gifts that are developing, which I would assume everyone on the planet has access to at some point. So I'm not there's no exclusion in this core value. It's about creating a safe space for beings who perceive themselves to be evolving past the projective patterns of karmic collective cycling, that are ready to start to step into their empowerment and their soul purpose in a very real way, but don't really know how to do that, and would like a place where they can, in a way, rest, feel safe, feel connected, and feel supported, for them to cultivate that over time and time. But it takes time to do that, because I know from years and years of going through that very inner journey where I was tested, a friend of mine always uses the words rites of passage, and that is very much what I felt like I was experiencing. I was experiencing these rites of passage, this pathway where I was dealing with not being able to distract myself, and if I did in moments, I could very quickly review it and see what was happening and recognize where I was entangled within relationships which were obviously serving me up until a point, but there was a level of blocks in relation, or patterns that were trauma-based patterns collectively that were manifesting in some of these relationships which were not really helping me own and step into my power as a living woman in the here and now across all planes. So it's not to blame anyone, because everyone has their path to walk, and whether that's, in any kind of malicious sense, and they have to learn from that experience of being that or experiencing from that, then that is just where people are at. And I experienced many different levels of some of those behaviors and witnessed myself and how another core value that I've had since I was really young, and it's because I moved from Solomon Islands to Australia, and it's a very different cultural shift, so I knew what it was like to feel like an outsider. So here we are. A recurring theme in my physical experience is reflected as me moving from Solomon Islands to Australia, is also reflected on a cosmic level, where I actually have felt like an outsider in other forms, not just the human experience. So, in one of the Star songs, there was a description of that fact that everything in the multidimensional self is reflected, is projected onto a lake, and we would say Gaia might be the lake. Let's just give that as an example. And this lake reflects back to us what it looks like from Gaia's reflection or experience. And we might not be able to identify the things that are the many different aspects that are multidimensional, because we're seeing it all in one screen through what we perceive as our life. But really, when you start to go into deeper aspects, you can see there are reoccurring multidimensional aspects that are on the surface seem like they're just part of Earth life, but then might reflect a lot more depth of your soul, for example, your connection to the living presence of life, that are more complex than what they may be, or more complex than what they maybe appear to be in terms of our framework as humans. I hope that makes sense. So, core values is truth. Speaking my truth allows a truthful space to exist for people who have felt isolated or unusual, or have felt like something's missing. So they can go to a place where there's this truth, my personal experience of truth. It doesn't have to be your personal truth, but it is a place in which I'm creating for my multidimensional self of truth, which merges many aspects of my being, which in normal circumstances I don't necessarily get to do socially. But here I get to do that. So I want to create that. That's a core value. Another thing is courage. I've had a few people say to me, you have so much courage to be so vulnerable, and it's very brave of you to do what you're doing. And that's really lovely. I really appreciate being called brave. Courage is a core value of what it is that I feel it is to live in the here and now experience and truly honor who we are. At times my intent is always really loving and very much about support, but sometimes making waves can bring up where people aren't comfortable with that, and that can be quite a difficult thing to receive for people, and it can be difficult for me to be projected on as, angel or devil, or we have all these polarities in the way we see things. So courage is an important part, because being myself authentically, being a way shower of my experience, it's the only thing I have access to, which is, I mean, oneness anyway, but in the here and now, people perceive me as Natasha, and therefore it is my responsibility to uphold the responsibility of Natasha. Is that to just work is that, you know, perceptually in Earthworld to work in a job and do that? Yes, in some situations, maybe. It might be to walk in a park and just enjoy nature. Sometimes, yes, that's all reflective. And then there's also this aspect where, yes, it involves doing star songs. The other aspect, which I feel is a core value, is appropriate communication, in that it's not, I mean, this is pretty unusual communication, okay? So it might be seen as inappropriate, but it's appropriate for me because it relates to, if I look on my phone, for example, I have 120 or more, you know, recordings. I'm doing this stuff all the time. This stuff's been coming through since I was young. If you look at my writing material, I have over 100 diaries where I record stuff, and I've, you know, dreams, experiences. I couldn't express it in the world, so I found avenues that were private for me to express this communication. So, you know, and like, so all those diaries, all of these voice recordings, all of these songs that I've recorded, they've been going regardless. So this is only a very small tip of the iceberg that you guys are witnessing in terms of the amount of and the volume of what comes through, because I'm aware that my responsibility is not just to blurt out a whole bunch of stuff, is to actually try to put it into a format that is receivable on a feeling level, because another core value is feeling, empathy, having deep sense of connection to feeling, because that's a big part of who I am, and how I experience life in this particular experience is very feeling based. And coming from Solomon Islands, experiencing that culture with a deep sense of feeling, where words weren't necessarily communicated because you knew you were loved and I knew I was understood just for being me, even if that was whatever that happened to be. So for me to bring words to you through star songs, it's seen as brave or courageous, but to me it's just being normal. This is just what happens. And I finally have worked out a format which allows me to create a bridge where I get to share that with other beings who might be inclined to be present and witness this. So I do want to ask if you have feedback, or if you'd like to share things. I do want this to be an interactive space. I don't want people to feel like they don't feel comfortable sharing. If you've had unusual experiences and they start to be recalled through witnessing this star songs, then please don't hesitate to leave comments underneath, you know, the episodes or the series, because I do need that sometimes, because I've shared so much within myself that to share it with a group of people or group of beings, I really want it to be a place where people want to turn up to. And I would like it to be a place where we could share that as we develop, or as I develop in this process, in honouring my purpose as Natasha, that it becomes a place where other people can honour who they are. So that's an important core value, is interactive connection, sharing, because I know what it's like to be isolated and to feel disconnected from reality that most people give a consensus is the reality, and yet it doesn't leave a lot of room for a lot of beings' experiences. You know, when a malevolent entity or energies try to dictate how people will express their experience of reality, it does create suppressive results. It suppresses people. It makes people feel conditioned into towing the line in regards to what the collective consciousness is allowed to experience. And the only way to really move beyond that is to truly be who we are. Sometimes people think that being who you are is talking louder. I've spent a lot of time contemplating and very clearly integrating who I am before I stepped into this role as a communicator and what I perceive as channeling. but I was already doing that. I just was very careful about what I shared, because I didn't want to confuse or create delusion or glamour for people, which is possible when you are a channeler. You can, I did a talk called Channeling, and it is about the responsibilities of communication. And we all have that responsibility, regardless of whether we perceive ourselves to be a channeler or whether we're, just what we perceive ourselves to be, a normal human being. There is a responsibility in communication, and there is cause and effect in terms of the way we say things to people. And, I am living as a human being in the here and now, connected to many parts of myself. There's probably a lot of things that I've said or done that haven't necessarily been translated or understood. And so that's why Star Songs is also really important, because I'm doing my best to frame things through topics and the feeling has to come through as a really important part of the sharing. I don't really consider myself a teacher. That's not necessarily, even if I'm perceived that way, that's not how I want to come across necessarily. I just feel like I'm sharing something that is very real to me, very true to me, and that has been my reality, and I'm giving other people an opportunity to be a part of that if they would like to. And if other beings have had the similar kind of experience, whether it's the same experiences or completely different, but they've felt isolated from the conditional expectation of what we perceive as society, then it's nice to be able to gather, the oddballs and the unusual, beautiful beings who have more to offer than just what's expected of them. And if anything, it probably would create waves as we continue to move through this collective process. So truth, courage, feedback is really important. Interaction, feeling safe is a really important one for me. And I guess just love, like feeling the connection of spirit through us all as instruments. Not everyone's meant to step into that path as being a communicator, and it's not realistic to think that that's everybody's gift at all. That just happens to be something that I've spent many, many years refining and developing. The amount of diaries, the amount of writing, the amount of things that have come through, that was all part of me learning how to refine and connect in, but also trusting in myself, and I couldn't even help it. It was just a part of my experience. I can't help it. Most people that I may be in the circuit with or friends with get voice messages from me. I don't really write text. I don't mind writing text, but voice messages are far more expressive for tone and for sound. And I love listening to other people's voices, and I love listening to their tones and the way that they articulate things. I learn so much from that translation, that vibrational translation. I love writing and reading as well. I love art, because that's another form of communication. So these are my passions, right? So they're my core values as well. So I just wanted to share all of that. You can completely disregard everything I've said if it doesn't relate to you at all. I do hope that more people will start to interact and share their experiences and feel safe to do so. But I will continue maintaining Star Songs regardless, and do my best to share with you the reality in which I experience and co-create with you whether you want to be a part of that and you have a preference of that or not. It's totally fine. I'm not offended in any way, shape or form. I've had to keep a lot of this under wraps anyway, so it's fine. I really appreciate your love and support, and I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me and supporting me through this process of sharing these many multidimensional aspects of spirit, and my own experience of spirit with you through prayer, through song, through whatever, through topics, to give you a bit of an understanding. One quick before I finish this video, I don't often know fully what I'm about to talk about. It's quite stressful sometimes going into a recording. It's like I know it's going to be fine, but it's like jumping into water and you don't know what temperature it's going to be, and you don't fully know what's going to come through. I get gists or little words sometimes leading up. I get updated or kind of aligned with certain concepts or ideas in build-up, but they're not things I necessarily always realize are linked to what's going to come through, because I'm very fluid and I'm just, you know, very right brain, very fluid, very a bit abstract. So I just kind of let things take care of themselves. I don't over project or over intellectualize these concepts or ideas too much. You know, some of them I've written about and been given a lot of information over years, and I'll read them and it'll be a completely different way of expressing it, and I'll be like, wow, I don't remember writing that at all. So when I sit down to do a video, it drops in as I say, word by word. It's not necessarily something that I can project or even know. So it is completely 100% in the now when I do the star songs, and it is very much about me trusting in my connection with spirit, which is really good. I think it's good for me in that experience. It has definitely taught me to trust that I have everything that it takes within the here and now to be who I am, whatever that happens to be, and to just hope and trust that other people will be able to receive that in a loving way. And sometimes people don't, and that's okay. So just wanted to share that with you so you understood the process a little bit more too. And I have spent a lot of time communicating and building into that, but at the same time I can never really be prepared what will come through. And I watch the video after, and I'm usually kind of surprised because I don't really I remember it, but it's not something that I'm trying to intellectualize. It just comes through as like it's like a song, and it comes through and I just sing it, and whatever that is. So I just wanted to share that. I was thinking of doing some shorter videos, like 5-minute ones, where I just go into some little things, but I'm still figuring those things out because time isn't really my thing, as you probably can tell. So I've just got to be in it and sit with it, and it wraps itself up in its own timing. I don't have much control over that, but I do feel that doing shorter ones, even if it was just like really like simple little things, would be beneficial for people who can't really sit through the longer ones, the longer in-depth kind of healing processes that come through. So if you have any feedback around that, I would love you to communicate. Just wanted to say thank you so much for your support and love for Star Songs, and I hope that I can continue to be supportive of you and your development in the here and now through the love and the connection of union that we share, of, you know, through the Christ consciousness that we are and that we are remembering ourselves to be. So thank you, lots of love, have a beautiful, beautiful time.